share, recipe share. Share a little recipe with Recipe Share. Recipe Share, Recipe Share. Share a little recipe with Recipe Share.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Recipe Share, a program on AADL TV where we take a few minutes to talk about recipes in a featured category. I am Elizabeth, and as usual, I'm joined today by Beth and Katie to tell us about their recipes, but we also have a special guest, Jacob, because today's Recipe Share is in conjunction with the 2023 Big Gay Read. This year's selection for the Big Gay Read is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo, and it is set in 1954. And because of that, we decided to choose for this week's category recipes from AADL's Community Collections, many of which come from that same era, the 1950s. So Jacob is going to tell us a little bit more about Last Night at the Telegraph Club, and then we will get into our recipes.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. So this is our third year doing the Big Gay Read. And what we're looking to do is to involve the community in queer issues through reading and discussion. So for the month of June, we've planned a couple handfuls of events that pertain to the book, that would enrich the reading experience of the book. But also these events, whether they're film screenings, the author's coming to give a talk, no matter what it is, even if you haven't read the book, it's still going to be pretty cool events. So we hope that you check those out and visit them. And you can find out all this information, details at aadl.org/the Big Gay Read. So yes, the book is set in 1954. It's set in San Francisco's Chinatown. It's about a child of Chinese immigrants coming to terms with her identity and what that looks like in the year 1954. There is so much to the book, and Lord knows I could talk all about it, but perhaps we should just get to the recipe. Elizabeth had made mention, and so had Katie, a little bit about filing through all the different recipes. Might have been a little bit difficult to find one that we wanted to really make at home and share and enjoy. Because the 1950s, it's filled with all sorts of gelatins and delicious canned goods and a lot of water chestnuts. So a recipe that I found that I was really excited to try is called rice waffles. Now, what the heck, rice waffles? It is a pretty standard waffle recipe with the inclusion of leftover cold white rice. I was drawn to this recipe for a couple of reasons, mostly because I always have leftover white rice. And I always just end up making fried rice. And it's like, okay, what can I do with this thing that I always have in my fridge that I need to spice it up a bit. I also love mochi, if you're familiar with mochi. It has that amazing bite to it. There's a softness, there's a gumminess. And then I was like, well, then you add the crunch of a waffle. I want to eat that. So it is, like I said, you got your flour and you got your baking powder and you got your salt that you sift. 4 teaspoons of baking powder. That seems insane to me. That's like a huge amount of baking powder. So you sift it all together, and then you take your cold cooked rice and you mix it in. And basically you're making a paste. That paste it was a pretty hefty paste. I'm looking at it in the bowl and I'm like, how is this gonna shake out? But then of course, you add your milk, egg yolk, well beaten, and then you have your egg white separately, just the one that you've beaten stiff. So you add your milk, your egg yolk, and your butter, mix it in real nice, and then fold in your one egg white, which I'm like, how much could that really do? Especially because I'm scrunching it in a waffle iron. Anyways, so then you pour it into your waffle iron and you cook it like a waffle. This waffle, this is like the only way you should ever really make waffles. It's mind blowing. Um, it has that good chew, but it's not like, oh, this is chewy. It's like there's some texture to this. Um, I also really appreciated that. I think with some perhaps more pancake recipes than waffle recipes, pancake recipes always have like a tablespoon or two of sugar in them. And this doesn't. This is like the perfect waffle for chicken and waffles. And then you start thinking, what other stuff do you just put on like a delicious, crunchy waffle? And it could be as simple as some chicken tenders you threw in the air fryer right out of the freezer, or it could just be so much other stuff. I don't know. It was really tasty, and of course, it was just as delicious with butter and syrup. I do prefer. This has nothing to do with the recipe. I prefer a waffle iron that has smaller little divots that perhaps mirrors a Waffle House waffle over one that has the big kind of, I think, associated with Belgian waffles. So yeah, that's rice waffles. And
Wow.
Katie,
Well, there's a couple things I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
One, if you put syrup on it. Also, I guess I haven't had mochi. I didn't know it has that kind of texture to it.
yes, it's like chewy, but it's not chewy in the way that like a Laffy Taffy is chewy.
Okay.
And I couldn't call it a crunch either. It's
Okay.
definitely not a crunch.
Okay.
It's just like a.
Oh, and then do you recall which collection group you got this from, or?
Yes, and I must reveal I cheat a little bit because this is not from the 50s.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
from Fare Thee Well 2, which is a Wellesley College cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it might not be from the 50s, but then I realized it is from 43 years ago. So I said, that's retro in some way.
Cool. I never thought of that kind of thing.
And you wonder, a lot of these kind of older recipes have a gimmick almost, or it's like, add a can of Coke, or it's like, add this to your normal recipe. So I thought it was kind of going to be like a gimmick recipe, but as I was making it, it all makes sense. It is wonderful. It's good stuff.
I just wanted to say too, I guess I'm a little surprised. So 43 years ago, what is that, 1980?
Yep.
I still feel like that is a time when like, I don't know how common it was to just have like cold white rice in your house, because I don't feel like people were like making like Asian stir fries in like that frequently in like a regular American home at that point. So it's kind of modern really for the time, I feel like.
I have to say though, like La Choi makes Chinese food. Wing American. So that was going on in the
Okay.
70s. Our family would make rice you're right though, we didn't do stir fries, but we would have the canned chop suey.
Okay.
Oh, but we'd have rice with other things. But yeah,
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
I don't know. It just seems like kind of modern to me. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think I had a similar thought. It's not like this would be perfect for minute rice because it's just starchy and it's not the same as if hey, Mr. Kitty Cat. It's not the same as steamed rice you make in a rice cooker.
Mhm.
That gumminess and kind of like that just unwashed rice. I don't know if y'all wash your rice or not. I'm a big proponent for washing rice because it makes it less glutinous. But if you have that glutinous minute rice that I think what maybe was around a lot during that time period,
Mhm.
perfect for that.
So you're right, we did have minute rice growing up.
Oh, Kennedy beef stew, crock pot recipes, minute rice was everywhere.
Yep.
So, Katie, what about your recipe?
Okay, I will share mine, but I just wanted to also sort of like second what Elizabeth was saying about yours because it sounded trendy to me when you were describing it. I was like, oh yeah, like this sounds like I could have just read it on the internet. So that's interesting to me because yes, I felt like this was a very difficult task. This was a challenge reading through recipes that I thought were like, oh, normal, normal, normal. Put it in gelatin. And I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. But there are some gems in there. And it's funny because the recipe that I'm sharing also comes from Fare Thee Well. Oh, the Wellesley Club cookbook. This is the first one. It was published in 1974. So the recipe that I chose from that collection is called Lemon Bread, a Sweet Bread. And this is by Elizabeth Cornwell. And the first ingredient that it calls for is shortening. And I've never used or purchased shortening in my life. I vaguely remember my grandmother and great grandmother had Crisco in the house when I was growing up. But I'm not going to use that. So I just use butter because what you do with it is you cream it together with sugar. So I know that you can do that with butter. So that's what I did. For this whole recipe, I used my stand mixer. So I creamed the butter and sugar together and then added 2 eggs. And then sort of in a separate bowl, you mix together flour, baking powder, and salt. And then you have milk. And so you add those alternately into your mixture. And then you mix in, it says lemon rind. I just assumed that's lemon zest. So I use the zest of a lemon, and then you put half a cup of chopped walnuts in as well. And then you grease your bread tin. You bake it in your oven for 40 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees. And while that's baking, you take your juice of 1 lemon and 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and you whisk that all together. And when the bread comes out and it's hot, you're to drizzle that on top. Now, what I did was I just drizzled it right on top without taking it out of the loaf pan because it says like, while it's hot. So I figured that's what you did. Well, it kind of sat on top for a little bit before eventually like sinking in. And that was interesting, but it did sink in. But it made the top of the bread a little bit crumbly and not the greatest consistency. So it made me wonder if you really do want to pop that loaf out and then drizzle that lemon juice on top. So it's maybe not sitting so much on the top. But honestly, like it was still really good. I liked it a lot, but I specifically liked it like 3 or 4 days later after it had been sitting in the fridge for a little bit and everything had sort of like solidified, and I was just eating it with a fork right out of the loaf pan. Like it was delicious. It tasted like cake. I will make this again, trying a different method with the drizzle, but yeah, it was great. Thanks to Elizabeth Cornwell from 1974.
That sounds super delicious. And like, honestly, I love some of the recipes that I did find. They might have had weird ingredients, but they were straightforward. Like that's easy. You're not like wondering what this is going to happen. It's like you're going to put it in a loaf pan and it's going to come out and it's going to be good, you know? And I love that. It's like, keep it simple.
Yep.
Very reliable. And lemony. I bet you could use different fruit too, different citrus.
Yeah, I recently saw a similar recipe that used grapefruit, and so I think that would be really tasty too. So yeah, you could play around with this recipe a little bit, I think, but I'm definitely gonna hang on to it. It's a good one.
I just have to say one more thing. My mom just sent me a picture of myself when I was 2.5 at the kitchen counter helping making my dad's birthday cake, and there's just a giant tub of Crisco like right next to me, which is like the shortening, you know. And so I feel like that has faded in popularity over the years, but it was still around in the 90s. So
right. Okay, well, Beth, please tell us what you chose from our community collections.
Sure. Well, I can say Crisco. I personally don't use Crisco, but my husband does buy like it comes in sticks for his pie crust. And I also want to say that I was distracted and didn't get on this call right away because I was busy reading last night of the Telegraph Club. And I got distracted. So anyway, I made something called barley pine nut pilaf. It's a really simple side dish. It came from the Jewish women's Hadassah, so I think it's called like Mama used to make is the cookbook. So, and there's something about barley, I have to tell you, I always remember, and every time I eat it, like if I just see it in soup, I remember when I asked my grandmother, I was about 7 or 8 years old. I said, "What is this?" In my spoon. That's barley. And I just always remember that. And so as I made this, I was like, she had a New York accent. And so it's super simple. And it was a really nice it was a nice leftover. So this says a 1/4 cup of margarine or butter. I use butter. 1/4 cup of pine nuts, a cup of green onion chopped, a cup of barley, 1/2 cup of chopped parsley, salt, pepper, and then 3 1/2 cups of chicken broth. I happened to be making chicken soup at the time, and then it tells you to brown the pine nuts and then remove them and reserve. Well, I didn't do that. I just went ahead and sauteed the green onions with it and the barley, toasting it up a little, and then you remove all that from the heat. Add the pine. So yeah, the nuts are already there. Add your parsley, salt, pepper, and then pour it in a baking dish with your broth. And then you bake it for about it says an hour to an hour and a quarter. I think it was about an hour. Also says cover if it seems to be drying out. When I checked it to see if it was drying out, it was done. So it might have even been less than an hour. Anyway, it was a nice, and then of course I topped it with a little feta cheese. As I was making, I was like, this is having cheese in it. It's a matter of which one am I going to choose. So it was feta, and yeah, it was a really good little side dish, and I liked having it for lunch because it was kind of a filling, side dish. So I liked it. And thank you, Doris Miller. I don't remember what year it was, but it was the 60s.
I love that. I did not expect it to get baked.
Yeah.
That was a surprise to me. I was thinking, when is she gonna like boil this with the chicken broth?
Yeah,
so that's a cool twist. Yeah.
Yeah, it was different. And then it's nice. Then you just put it in the oven and set the timer. So Elizabeth, what did you end up making?
Well, did anyone else have comments about best recipe?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I think it sounds like it would make your house smell amazing and like really cozy. That's all.
Yep, it did with
the
nut smell, the barley, then the chicken broth. Yeah, it was a good smelling house that day.
And I feel like my side dishes are always roasted vegetables and then rice or roasted vegetables. I never cook barley, and I
don't either.
ought to. I'm stuck in the same side dish cycle.
I mean, I do like farro, but this is just, it was a nice and a warm thing too. So, all right, Miss Lizzie, what did you?
Okay, so my recipe came from the sequel, I believe, to Beth's cookbook, because it's called Like Mama Used to Make and More. 400 treasured recipes, flavors of the past and present from Ann Arbor's Jewish homes. And I kept it simple because I was struggling. So many of the recipes, it's like put it in gelatin or like use weird like tinned like canned shrimp or some stuff that I was like, do we even have that anymore? Like, I don't know what this is. And I always like to comment every so often recipe share, like, like we buy this stuff and we have like we eat it, it's not like we gotta like it. So anyway, I poked around for a while and I ended up making broccoli salad because this seemed like a nice spring dish, and I have been getting radishes in my CSA, and this includes radishes, so I was excited. So super easy. You get a couple heads of broccoli, you cut the florets, or however you say it, into, bite-sized pieces. You don't really use the stalk. Some people are super into using that. I don't care. I just compost it. But so you have that, and then you slice a quarter pound of mushrooms. It said 15 to 18 radishes, 2 bunches of scallions, and you add it all together. So you have all the veggies. Then you add a half a can of garbanzo beans, 2 teaspoons of mustard. I use Dijon, salt and pepper. Okay, this was kind of crazy to me. It called for a cup of oil. That seemed like a lot. I just kind of did olive oil and red wine vinegar to taste. And then you're supposed to squeeze in the juice of 1 lemon, toss it all together. I was glad I did this because I really think it would have been too wet using like that much, like it would basically like almost 2 cups of liquid. I was like, whoa. So I was glad I eyeballed that. And it was, this super simple. I felt like the garbanzos were kind of a weird ad, honestly, because the rest was just kind of like spring veggies, radishes, scallions, the broccoli, mushroom, like that was good. I don't really know why the garbanzos were in there. It was fine, but I might leave them out next time. I think I would have liked a bit of more crunch. The radishes were crunchy, but like something like a nut. So I think I might have thrown maybe some walnuts in. That could have been good, especially if they were toasted. I don't know. It was easy and good, and like a good way to use veggies, a nice spring side, honestly. I would I'm not gonna forget this recipe, and it was just easy, and I really liked the mustard, lemon juice, olive oil, red wine vinegar. That was nice. I haven't I've used all those things a lot, but I haven't combined them all I guess in a while, and it was good. So broccoli salad is the title of the recipe, and let me see if I can credit who it's by. Bobby Levine. So thank you, Bobby.
That's just way different than any other broccoli salad that I've ever had. Like, I feel like I've had a lot of broccoli salads, and most of them have some sort of cream base to them. So that was just like the Dijon, I guess, would give you a little bit of creaminess, but not like a mayo, So that's it's way different, and with mushrooms and the chickpeas and everything. So very cool. I love the interesting combination. Unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was I that's what I thought when I saw the recipe. I was like, we'll give this a whirl. So yeah. Okay, well, if we have no further comments, I will say thank you for watching our special episode of Recipe Share celebrating the Big Gay Read. Be sure to click the link below on the event page at aadl.org to find the recipes we talked about, and feel free to share your own in the comments. Also, feel free to browse our community collections of recipes. There are hundreds and hundreds, and a lot of them are pretty unique, so it's fun to read through even if you opt out of cooking any of them. Join us next time on Recipe Share, and we're looking forward to seeing what you've been making, so thanks for sharing.
Recipe Share, Recipe Share, share a little recipe with Recipe Share.